David Fincher has directed some of the most engaging, sharp, captivating, and even disturbing films, like Seven, The Game, Fight Club, Gone Girl, Zodiac, even The Social Network. He's now got a new crime drama on Netflix called The Killer, which stars Michael Fassbender in the lead role. Is this going to be counted among some of Fincher's greatest films? After a fateful near miss, an assassin battles his employers and himself on an international manhunt he insists isn't personal. So we got Michael Fassbender as an assassin. He's zen-like, calm, controlled, and always repeating his mantra of rules to help keep him on a path. Now, one of his assignments goes sideways, and he then finds himself targeted by those that hired him. But he turns the tables and goes after them in an effort to remove any threat against him. This really feels like The Accountant mixed with Grosse Pointe Blank. Now, in The Accountant, the character of Christian Wolff is highly organized, meticulous, and very disciplined. Fassbender's killer is all of these things as well, patiently going through all of the necessary steps to help ensure a flawless job. This also resembles the John Cusack comedy, but in an opposite take on Grosse Pointe Blank. Here, Fassbender is the one chasing all of the killers because of the botched job. So it's not a comedy by any means, outside of one element within the script. Now, I love the ongoing gag of the aliases that Fassbender uses. They're not unique, but the idea of using them is exceptional. And amazingly, no one checking his ID bursts into laughter or at the very least questions if the name that he gives is his real name. So this is an unhurriedly told story. Scenes are longer than you might expect, allowing us to get a great understanding of the killer's mind. Within just the opening scene, the tone is established, showing us his ability for long-suffering tediousness. There's very little dialogue in the movie, especially in the opening scenes, and what we do get is mainly through the internal thoughts of the killer. Now seriously, this allows us to really get into his head. And I think that's a good thing. Fassbender creates an unassuming everyman, designed to blend in and just go unnoticed, or at least be unremarkable and unmemorable. And as we listen to his narration, a lot of development is established in the way that he goes about his chosen career. We don't really know much about him as a person, though. Maybe some small glimpses just every now and then. And while it's kind of expected that in order to keep this guy an enigma, his life would be obscured for us. But it keeps him at arm's length, so he's constantly a stranger, making it difficult to connect with him. This strategy also runs the risk of making him unremarkable to us as the audience, which then works against any draw to the story. And I struggled with engaging with the character. Fassbender does a great job of making this guy stoic and mysterious, but the writing prevents him from becoming memorable. I could get mildly caught up with excitement in an action sequence, but that was mainly because if the killer died, the story would go unfinished, and I was desperate to learn the outcome. And within these action scenes, some wonderfully executed, brutal hand-to-hand combat sequences showcase a wild amount of stamina and brutality, lasting several minutes and also not utilizing extremely quick cuts. Now, some edits are fast, but most of the time we're able to clearly watch the fights take place. I also appreciate that while the film doesn't shy away from the violence, it also doesn't linger on it gratuitously. This is a violent story, so we need to see some carnage, but it doesn't overdo it with the gore. Just a realistic and believable amount of bodily destruction that fits within the narrative. Now, part of the mantra that we hear from the killer at the beginning of the movie, and then carrying all the way through, is to act quickly and without emotion or attachment. And this can lead to abrupt interactions with characters. And while that can be fun because we never are sure when a target is going to meet their end, this also causes some choppy storytelling. The killer will do his job, and then we're switching to a new location as he pursues his next target. Now, the progression felt thin and kind of rushed, even though, as I'd said before, the story itself is deliberately not quick. And the slowness itself, that's not a negative. I think to some of Fincher's other films, like Zodiac or even Seven, those have a slow and steady pace to them. Okay, Seven, it feels quicker. But these are phenomenal stories. But what greatly helps them is the inclusion of richly developed characters, flawed or not, that we can then become deeply invested in, creating a story that then envelops us rather than one we just kind of watch. Now, there are obviously other actors within the story, including Tilda Swinton and Charles Parnell. Now, they're fine in their roles, but outside of Fassbender, every other character has maybe 3 to 5 minutes max on screen. The interactions with Swinton and Parnell are pretty dramatic, using camera placements that put us up close enough to just eavesdrop on what's going on, but not so close that we're up in everybody's business. Well, except one part. There is a moment when the camera gets very personal with Parnell, but it's needed for the scene. Now, I enjoyed the interactions between Fassbender and these two, even though they were brief. I don't think this is Fincher's strongest film. And while I didn't dislike it by any means, I'm not overly enamored with it either. I think that's mainly because of how the killer is presented to us. And there's no mystery of why he's doing something. And that, by itself, again, is not a bad thing. But he's also a stranger, chasing after other strangers. The tension is mostly non existent outside of some intense fights. I mean, I can get behind the revenge angle, and then the killer's low key and chill state of mind. It's a somewhat different presentation of an assassin. But the movie as a whole, it just failed to captivate me, leaving me with an ambivalent feeling. So overall, the 2 hours patiently go by in a steady telling of revenge as Fassbender methodically stalks his prey and eliminates those who wronged him. While some of the interactions the protagonist has are engaging and tense, the majority of the narrative lacks any suspense, and when that's combined with a stranger for a main character and targets who are even less known, the story as a whole feels impotent and lackluster. And even though some moments are exciting, the overall narrative is similar to wallpaper. It just exists as we watch, without intrigue or risk. Fincher has given us other excellent works, and while this one isn't terrible, it's also not great. There's very brief sex and slight nudity, some profanity, and then a lot of violence. I give The Killer 3 out of 5 couches. So do you have a favorite film from Fincher? Or maybe just a favorite with Fassbender? Either way, let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.